The revolution's begun. The time to stand up has come. We are the rocking of the throne. We are the rocking of the throne.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor Tiffany, the co-founder of Revolt Against Plutocracy, and I'm joined today by the author of the book Bernie Won: How the DNC Cheated Bernie Sanders, BC Degraff. Brandon, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm really enjoying this. And as you can imagine, I enjoy the question that you keep asking Bernie delegates over and over again. I'm sure you can guess what is that question that I enjoy that you asking them.
Well, there's like several of them. One of them was, how did the DNC treat you at the convention?
That you ask a lot, and then there's another question you ask almost every one of the delegates.
Were you Bernie or bust?
That's the question. I really love that.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. Yeah. And it's funny because your message circulated all the way to me, and it made me. This was a big part of the movement for me too, because Bernie or bust meant not only intelligence, but it meant integrity too. You weren't going to sell out to somebody who had cheated you.
Well, that was a point we made in one of our posts after the DNC. Is, are you really going to support Bernie-crats? Are you really going to support somebody who robbed Bernie from the nomination? So yeah, we made a point of that and tried to blast that post all over the place. But I just really appreciated that. So one thing I noticed, or it's clear, you're going down a number of states, and it's states where, what is it? How many do you do? 20 some of them?
28, 29?
28, 29 states. It's states where, at least I haven't finished the book, I admit, but in every one I've read so far, the decision has been, the outcome, the supposed outcome, has hinged on the superdelegates getting 10,000 votes for every superdelegate, right? The equivalent of 10,000 of our votes, just because they're a superdelegate. And that's why Hillary won the state, even though Bernie won the state.
Yep, that's correct.
So isn't that, I mean, we knew, certainly Bernie knew that going in, and we knew that going in. Why is that such a big deal in the aftermath of what happened for you?
For me, it meant that we didn't have fair elections, and it meant the Democratic Party could do as they please. Even if we ran somebody like Bernie Sanders or Tulsi, it's always going to be whoever the donors want. It's always going to be whoever the superdelegates want. It's going to always be these people who are higher up officials than us, who get voted in, and these are like politicians like Dan Lipinski and Melba Curl and people like that who are establishment pawns who were put into place so that they could vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016.
So there's a rule, and I'm not sure it's been finalized yet, but it just recently came out. It's one of the few improvements I've seen since 2016, which is that in the first round of voting at the DNC in 2020, the superdelegates are not going to have a vote. Do you see that as an improvement? Do you think that's just going to be whitewashing or covering up, masking some other manipulations behind the scenes that is basically going to rig the systems, continue to rig the system anyway for the establishment candidate, whoever that happens to be in 2 years?
Well, I think this is actually an improvement right here. If they continue down this path, they'll have just as fair elections as the Republican Party. As you know, the superdelegates outweigh the voters. So if we have that, the only thing we would have to worry about is election fraud, period. So if there's like something going on where there's voter suppression, then we'll know right away that it's the DNC doing it and that we are still experiencing the same things. So this is an improvement, but I wouldn't say this is something that's going to, be monumental because we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, agreed. You talked, again, and I admit I haven't finished reading the book, but mostly you're talking about voter suppression in New York and Arizona, California. Do you address the discrepancy between the exit polling in many counties, not every county in every state, but many of the counties around the country, the discrepancy between the exit polling and the reported outcome. Is that something you address?
I addressed that in Massachusetts. There was, I believe it was in the book. I'm not sure, but I have addressed this before, that the exit polls in Massachusetts never lined up correctly, and it just showed that the exit polls were more favorable for Bernie Sanders than they were Hillary Clinton.
But right, but that's the exit polls, but the outcome didn't match, which, by the way, didn't happen on the Republican side. Their exit polling always came within the margin of error.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have any speculation on what that was about? Why that happened in various counties, not just Massachusetts, but Louisiana and other states around the country, certain counties in certain states around the country?
Well, see, I see it as this: the Republican Party has fair elections, if you can consider gerrymandering to be fair in some ways. It's not, but like for instance, the Democratic Party likes to use their lawyers to do their bidding and tell the truth. So their lawyer that went against Jared Beck even stated that if they wanted to choose a candidate, they could. Well, they did. They chose Hillary Clinton. So what they had to do was they had to do an operation, because Bernie Sanders was so huge that they swept everything under the rug as much as possible, switching votes. Like in Chicago, they switched votes. They erased Bernie votes and then added in Hillary votes to replace them.
Yeah, that's kind of the nub of my question. Any idea whatsoever how they managed to get away with it, or how they did it?
I don't even know how that's even legal, but here's the thing. When the lawyer said that they get to choose, I guess this is what they meant.
Yeah. Extraordinary thing that we went through. What is your sense going forward? Just we talked about the superdelegates, possibly if the DNC votes that in and allows that to happen, that the superdelegates won't be voting on the first round of voting at the DNC in the 2020 election. Do you see any possibility that an insurgent could actually do what insurgent Trump did to the Republican Party, which is come in and quite literally take over the party?
I'm seeing it right now. Bernie Sanders is making a big difference within the communities and within young people. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is now rising up. You have Cynthia Nixon who's rising up. You have Tim Canova who's rising up. You have all these great candidates who are just coming out of the woodworks, and they're impressive, and they're inspired by Bernie Sanders and his message, and they're actually doing great things, and they actually stand a chance of winning.
Yeah, I don't know if Cynthia has a chance of beating Cuomo. Again, I don't know. We have paper ballots here, and they could be hand counted. If it was close enough, if she thought it could be challenged, I don't know if she would get I don't know if she'd get a recount period, but I don't know if she would get a legitimate recount if she would actually ask for one. So yeah, I mean, there are some things underway. I'm just wondering if you think that it's enough.
I don't really think so, because the thing is, now you have like Crowley. He's now running as an independent to fight against a Democrat who actually won fair and square because he's a sore loser. You're showing that, the DNC doesn't want to change. They're rejecting the change and trying to push us away. So
Can you imagine if Ocasio-Cortez did that to him? Can you imagine what the establishment would be saying about her?
Mm-hmm. The media would go crazy, calling her a sore loser and everything. But really, we know that Dan Crowley is just a sore loser, and the media doesn't want to paint him that way, because he caters to them. He's for their donors. He's for his own donors. He's the establishment's pick.
So I'm glad you brought up the media, because even if everything somehow gets leveled, the playing field in the Democratic primaries gets leveled because of the pressure brought forth by Bernie Kratz and so forth, ongoing and continuously into the next election, you still have the problem with the media, right? They are in bed. I mean, that's what one of the things that came out, and you cover this in your book, that came out in the leaked emails is the extent to which, basically, as Tim Black said during the Bernie or Bust rally in Philadelphia, you know, Clinton was more dangerous than Trump because at least Trump can't tell the media what to print. The Clinton machine was telling them what to print.
Oh yeah, you seen a revived Mockingbird project, which was the CIA project. You know, it was the McCarthyism. It was all that. It was the propaganda. They pushed all that. So it kind of revived it with Hillary Clinton in this Russia scandal with the emails, and they really tried to paint Hillary Clinton as an electable candidate. And the truth was, is she just wasn't.
Yeah, for a wide variety of reasons, it's really amazing. I mean, you could see it, and you documented it in the book that you know, Hillary was having trouble filling gymnasiums, and Bernie was filling these huge coliseums, and then he turned around and supposedly lose the primary. It was bizarre.
In that specific state, like for instance, California rally was 60,000 people. Hillary Clinton, she could only get 18,000 people to attend her rally in Ohio, and Donald Trump always had bigger crowds than.
And as you point out, that was her biggest rally. There were times she couldn't fill a gym or a cafeteria.
Mm-hmm. Or as Lee Camp said, Hooters. Couldn't fill Hooters.
Right. It was amazing. The whole system, the whole thing was corrupt. And of course, now we know, because of the revelations coming from Brazil, that the Clinton campaign actually controlled the DNC. She financed it, and then took control of the operation. Bernie never had a chance, no matter what happened.
No, he really didn't, and that's the sad part. As the first episode of Rigged, which is based on the book, Bernie Sanders stated himself that Hillary Clinton had 400 superdelegates before the election even began.
Right. So you wonder if he knew going in what we know now, what Brazil basically conveyed and announced and admitted that, and of course we also know she was, you know, giving Clinton the questions for the debates. But I wonder, of course, I don't get a chance to interview him, but I wonder if, in hindsight, he would have actually gone in as a Democrat, knowing the financial and control relationship between the Clinton campaign and the DNC, because in effect there was no separation. The DNC was the Clinton campaign.
Yep, that's exactly true. And see, I think a friend of mine told me just recently, he believes that the reason that Bernie Sanders jumped into the race is because Martin O'Malley was getting ready to jump out of the race and nobody else was running. So he wanted to run in as a Democrat because he thought that it might be a better chance to actually beat Hillary. But what he didn't realize is he was going up against not only the establishment, but he was going up against the media establishment. And the media establishment has a lot of control over a lot of the things that people think. So people who don't think for themselves will turn on CNN, turn on Fox News, and turn on MSNBC and see this propaganda all over the place of, oh, Hillary's more electable than Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is the bad guy, you know, and just fool everybody into believing that the Clintons are somehow immune to all of the scandals that they've done and the crimes that they've committed.
Yeah, I found it fascinating at the time that Fox was the only one that would have us come on and explain and describe Bernie or Bust. MSNBC never mentioned the phrase Bernie or Bust until Rachel brought it up to Bernie in an interview after the DNC, and then posed it to him as a problem. And CNN did have a story about it, featuring who was on there, Billy in Philadelphia. Billy, help me with his last name. Billy Taylor. And he had a great line about choosing between the devil and the demon. But that was just before California, right? That was very late in the game. So and they knew it was going on, right? CNN was aware of it because Yane Endicott popped up on CNN and said, I'm Bernie or Bust. And then she had him on the next day, or they had her on the next day talking. Not so much about Bernie or
huge. It's very huge. It's still happening.
Right. But you wouldn't know it listening to MSNBC. They very much suppressed that entire phrase. So my question is, even if Bernie runs as an independent, we actually supported his run as a Democrat because we didn't think, because of the way the media would keep him suppressed, the way they kept Ralph Nader suppressed. Nader was filling coliseums too, but no one knew about it because the media wasn't reporting it. So we thought he made the right move running as a Democrat because at least then the media would cover it as a horse race. And we were right about that, of course, but they still, they were still basically doing what Hillary Clinton instructed them to do, the Clinton campaign instructed them to do, which was the Pied Piper strategy, giving Donald Trump tons of coverage. After I was on Fox, I was supposed to go on CNN to talk about Bernie or bust. And one of the days that they could have had me on, they had Donald Trump on for an hour because he got endorsed by Ben Carson. Full hour of Carson's endorsement of Trump, rather than having me on for 5 minutes to talk about the Bernie or bust strategy. So my question to you is, why would this be any different next time around, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders or whoever it might be?
Well, I don't think it's going to be any different, honestly. I think that we're going to see the media do the same exact thing that they did in 2016 and probably do it even more and probably start bashing Bernie and doing more things to try to, because they're scared. They're obviously scared because they see that this rise in progressivism is happening and it endangers their jobs. It does. Because their executives like Jeff Zucker from CNN, he relies on that paycheck probably from wherever it comes from to say, hey, keep spreading rumors about Russia.
Did you read Outsider in the White House, Bernie's book about winning the seat in Congress? And he just modified it a little bit. It's clear he's going to go after the media. He's going to break up the media. So what you're saying is absolutely true. They didn't want him to win that election because they didn't want this monopoly that's developed because of the Telecommunications Act signed by Bill Clinton in 1996. They didn't want that unfolded. This is gravy train for them. So it's in their financial self-interest to keep Bernie Sanders in particular, keep him down, keep him repressed.
You're breaking up a little bit. Oh, there you go.
Okay, just to not cover him fairly. It was in their. So you think they would do the same thing to perhaps Tulsi Gabbard or any other? We don't know if she's running, but any other insurgent candidate who isn't toe the normal party line?
Well, yes, and sometimes it depends on the candidate. Like, for instance, Tulsi Gabbard, she actually does get a lot of right-wingers who actually do like Tulsi. So you could see her on Fox News a lot, and I don't think they could actually try to take out people like Tulsi Gabbard. Jesse Ventura could actually cater to right-wingers more, as, he's kind of has the same issues on like gun control and stuff like that. But we got to get progressives that are like Bernie Sanders, who are fully invested into taking out the media, taking out the wars that we're going into, and the corporations that basically fund campaigns that, eventually they make you say yes to them, like pharmaceutical companies. All these monopolies.
Let me talk about the wars, because Bernie, I didn't think had an anti-imperialist stand. As he had a non-intervention stand. He had a non-regime change stand. But and a lot of leftists were very critical of him at the time because they didn't think he went far enough criticizing the Pax Americana and the American Empire. And I had responses to that, but I'm just curious what you thought.
Well, I actually have had very huge criticisms towards Bernie Sanders' stance on airstrikes. But I want to say right now that, Bernie Sanders isn't the most 100% anti-war candidate, but he is very, very, very close. And he's got a mindset to manage what we're doing. But one of my biggest things about Bernie Sanders is he actually opposes the Saudi Arabia deals that we've been making and all of these backdoor stuff that's going on. He's basically talked bad. He's basically spoken out against Donald Trump's relationship with Saudi Arabia and the United States' involvement with Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. So there's been a lot of things that Bernie Sanders has said about the things that are going on, And as you know, Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest contributors to why the Middle East is on fire right now.
Right. Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit. And before I do, I was wondering if you want to just let's move some paper. If you want to tell viewers how they can find this and get their hands on it if they want to read it.
Yep, this is available at feederead.com, and you just search Bernie 1 and you'll find it. I wanted to make it more convenient, but at the same time, I didn't want to go to Amazon because, Amazon is very critical of Bernie Sanders at the time, and I was not, wanting to post my book where Bernie posted his book and they gave it low reviews. Hillbots did, and Hillary Clinton pushed out her book, and it was a 5-star book for like 2 months straight. But Bernie got like a 4.5.
You didn't want to make Jeff Bezos a little richer?
Oh, what?
You didn't want to make the owner of Amazon a little wealthier?
I would have probably made a lot more money on it, but still.
Well, they take their fair share, believe me.
Oh yeah.
Let me address now the recent indictment that came down yesterday. So I want to just read from a section of your book here that's under August 2015. You write, the DNC reported that hacking intrusion took place, but would not allow the FBI to investigate. And later on, no Russians were involved. In light of the indictment for the 12 Russians for hacking the DNC server, did you want to modify that claim, or you want to stand by that?
I'm going to stand by that because I'm going to tell you right now. This is the claims that Rosenstein is making are actually inaccurate, and they're actually recycled news. As you know, the Mueller investigation, when he pulled up those 12 indictments for the supposed Russians in Florida, well, was it Florida or Russia? I don't know. It was someplace, and they covered this story, CNN did, in 2016, before it was big news and before it was an investigation. And when they came back to the indictments, they found that, there was no connection with Russia. There was no connection between the elections. And in this specific case right now, as Tim Black, I'm going to quote him, it's just a piece of paper right now. It's just a piece of paper.
Well, it's a 29-page indictment, and it has allegation after allegation after allegation, and what it doesn't have, and I don't know why, but it doesn't have any evidence, right? But this didn't come from Rosenstein. He's presenting it. This came from a grand jury. So clearly there had to have been some evidence presented, because you're not going to get, 6 or 12 people to put forward an indictment if you don't present them with some. You can't just give a grand jury accusations and say, here, rubber stamp this. You have to present them with some kind of evidence. So there has to be something out there.
Yes. Now, you see, this is what the media does, though, and this is also what our government and our system does. They like to fabricate things, because if you remember correctly, they said that the anthrax attack on America was from Iraq. The anthrax attack was from Iraq, and tried to play it off like that. Colin Powell even said it. George W. Bush even said it, and this is how we pushed towards the war in Iraq, was a small amount of anthrax that we had given them in, I believe, 1994. And so this is what we do. We tend to push towards these agendas, infiltrating groups and stuff like that, arming terrorists, and then bookmarking it so that we can come back to it, make them dangerous, make them criminals, and then say, we need to step in and we need to do something. This is another one of those cases where they're trying to shift the blame over, but at the same time, they're trying to manifest this story that it happened, but they don't have ground evidence to pin Donald Trump with Russia. And if they did, would Donald Trump even see a cell? Because I don't think so.
Well, at this point, they're not trying to make the collusion argument. They're just trying to make the hacking argument. But as I said, there's no evidence in the indictment itself. It's just accusation after accusation. Fascinating story. It almost reads like a spy novel in its own way, because of the way they claim this happened, that they managed to find a vulnerability in the DCCC server, got in there, planted software that allowed them to view one particular person who had access to the DNC server, literally watched him type in his password, and learned how to get into the DNC server and then planted all that malware inside there. That's the claim of the indictment.
Right. Also, there is Jimmy Dore covered this too. Jimmy Dore covered this in 2016. That Guccifer 2.0. Are you aware of him?
Well, yeah, he's in the indictment.
Right. Yes. He's an American, I believe. I don't believe he's Russian at all. He has a Twitter account, and he speaks perfect English. He's into American politics, and he was, I guess, friends with Seth Rich. So if they're going to point at anything of leaking emails and stuff like that, they should probably go there. But at the same time, Jimmy Dore covered this story, and Guccifer 2.0 even revealed what the DNC and DCC were hiding, and they had folders and all kinds of just payment plans and stuff like that. And one of them even said pay to play, which I thought was very bizarre. I'd like to know what's in that folder, pay to play. But these were just
financial transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously, this came out just hours before he met with the Queen of England. Trump met with the Queen of England, and then 2 days before he's going to meet Putin. Do you think that's a coincidence, or do you think they're trying to somehow undermine? You've got Democrats and even some Republicans saying, "Oh, don't meet with Putin. Don't meet with Putin. Let's have this Cold War because, gosh damn it, the first one just wasn't terrifying enough." Do you think this is like some sort of deep state activity, that they're actually trying to undermine relations with Russia and trying to basically spoil any sort of diplomacy or attempts at improving relations between Trump and Putin?
I do, and this is where things get a little sketchy. But I believe it all has to do with Genie Energy, and Genie Energy is a company founded by Dick Cheney, Jacob Rothschild, and Rupert Murdoch. If you know those three men, they should not be running a business together. So these three men are they have an Israeli gas line that they want to extend from Syria to Turkey. And the only thing that's standing in their way is Vladimir Putin, who is also trying to get rid of the rebel armies in Syria, which they've already done, and they've gotten rid of ISIS in Syria as well.
So this is more of a broad, of course, resource-based geopolitical strategy from the power elite, the members of the deep state, people connected with corporate America and the energy sector and so forth.
Yeah, it's a large scale business deal, and as Hillary Clinton has stated, Iraq is a business deal. This is all just a business deal. All of these wars, all these proxy wars, all these tiny little groups that are coming up, they're all to manifest money and resources.
Well, we should think of Iraq as a business opportunity. That's Clinton's almost a direct quote from Secretary Clinton.
Yep, that is actually the exact quote from her, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. They thought they could actually get away with putting forward a candidate like Hillary Clinton, who, even before the revelations that came out from the leak or hacked emails, because I'm still not convinced either way. I let you read, or I wanted you to read, I don't know if you did, that article by Caitlin Johnstone about truth, and really just focusing on what we have absolute certainty about, and
right.
and trying to get a grip on what we don't have absolute certainty about. And so I've actually shifted. I have thought for a while now that it was Russians who did the fishing expedition. It wasn't just Podesta that they were after. They were after dozens of Democrats. And they weren't fishing for Republican email addresses. They were fishing, or accounts. They were fishing for specifically high-ranking and Clinton campaign people email accounts. So I'm pretty convinced that that was done by Russians. But I'm still pretty skeptical about the actual DNC leak hack story. One of the who was it? Ray McGovern. There were a few other people who came out and claimed that the transfer rate for what came out of the DNC server was way too high to have been done from Moscow or anywhere in Europe. Right? Remember that?
Yes.
Right. So it had to be a leak. But what, again, in this indictment, what's being claimed is it was actually sent to a server in Illinois, and that would explain that high rate the high transfer rate that they've documented for those emails and everything else that came out of the DNC.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that that an organization known as CrowdStrike. Oh, did you freeze? Oh, you didn't freeze. Okay. Yeah, an organization known as CrowdStrike was the only organization that the DNC allowed to investigate their servers, and CrowdStrike made a bunch of claims that the DOA disavowed, and some of those claims were that this was done by a foreign entity they believed was Russian hackers. However, Guccifer 2.0, the one that's being indicted, claimed to be indicted, has stated on multiple occasions that Seth Rich was the one who leaked the emails.
You again cite something in here that was news to me, that Richard Clark's company, Good Harbor Risk Management, also had access to the DNC servers. That's first I've heard of that.
Yeah, and I could never even I couldn't get a read on that claim either. I still have to look into a lot of the things that some of the delegates and Bernie Sanders supporters have said, because there's one in Florida that actually a company who worked on the voting machines that people believed that the DNC hacked into and changed votes.
Well, I'm going to basically wrap this up. I don't have any other questions, unless you have something else you want to say about what's in here.
Nope. I pretty much covered that all in Rigged. If you want to see the live action version of the book, go to Mikasa Sukasa Network with Nico House, and you can see Rigged season 1 and 2.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you the same question that I was asked by Citizens Media, Jeff Epstein at Citizens Media, in terms of 2020, or just going forward, even maybe this year in the elections. Are you hopeful that progressives are actually going to be able to win elections and take over this country and reverse or eliminate these neoliberal policies that are causing so much damage to the industrial base of this country and the working class, and creating just ever more poor people? Are you optimistic or are you pessimistic?
Oh yeah, I see what we're doing, and I see that we're doing great things. Marijuana is about to be legalized recreationally here in Michigan. The things that are going on right now in this country, we are the domino effect, and we're making it happen a lot faster. So, and there's been reports that marijuana will be legalized in 2021, and other people are saying, well, it might just be 2019 that we get it all legalized. So there's things that are happening right now that are pushing towards the agenda. We actually are seeing a lot of changes within our communities and within the country. We are seeing a lot of the bad things that the Democrats have done, such as the immigration and the lack of reform that they've done. And I see that we, as a whole, are going to push towards that. And 2020, it's going to be a big deal about these camps. And people aren't talking about them. People aren't actually saying what they really are. We haven't seen this stuff since FDR, and that's sad to say. But I see a lot of great change coming.
What about third-party candidates? Do you see people like Kenneth Mejia possibly winning an election, or any other third-party candidate?
I'm very hopeful for Kenneth. I am very, very hopeful, and I'm glad that he ran as a Green. I'm very shocked that I'm hearing reports that he actually might take it. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it is. We're hoping to send out a blast of support for him, but our support, as you may or may not know, this year is contingent upon signing a contract for American Renewal. It's kind of our version of Bernie or Bust for 2018. Instead of Bernie, which he's a person with an agenda, we basically just turned that agenda into a contract and said, all right, you sign this contract or we're not with you. And we're still trying to get Kenneth to sign that. If anybody listening and wants to support Kenneth and wants us to support Kenneth, get a hold of Kenneth Mejia and ask him to sign the contract for American Renewal, because we do want to get behind his campaign, but we're not going to make exceptions for anybody. We're pretty hardcore about CFAR or else lose. BC, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate your time and wish you luck with book sales.
Thank you, Victor.
All right, take care.
Revolt Against
Take care.
Plutocracy won't just be covering the news about the necessary revolution in the United States. Sometimes we'll be making the news. If you want to stay on top of the revolutionary actions and strategies of grassroots, genuine progressives, and our allies, please subscribe to our YouTube channel today.